Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome.
Hey everyone, this is a very special Father's Day edition of our MiniPod, and we want to welcome you home, especially to the fathers. Andrew has some big thoughts on what it means to be a Black father in this country, and so Andrew, I want you to take it away.
Thank you, sis. The reputation of Black fathers has weathered the bumps, bruises, and pains of not only the impacts of the actual job of being a father, but also the mercilessly relentless media and societal narratives that are often critical, such words as deadbeat, useless, absent, uncaring, and not a family person are just some of the words, phrases, descriptions that might accompany the misguided definition of a father. Nothing, however, could be further from the truth. As we approach this Father's Day, let's use our energy to tell a more complete and honest story of Black men who are also fathers. But before we deepen into this mini-pod with me and my co-host, I have a very, very simple request for our listeners, and that is, could you please take 60 seconds, 1 minute to reflect on your experience with your own father? It could be a precious memory that encapsulates in some short form the best memory you have of your father, living or past. Maybe you could even offer what your father may have offered you by way of the best advice that you didn't know was at the point, but you by and by came to learn and benefit from. And this is actually where I'd like to begin the conversation with my co-host, which is, I know we each have different experiences with father and father figures in our lives. And I certainly don't expect any of us to romanticize any part of it, but to hopefully talk honestly about what it means. But this was really Tiffany's idea to sort of deepen into this conversation about fathers and Black men as fathers. And then I saw it on our database and I was like, I want to borrow this from you, because I kept thinking, just as Mother's Day had recently passed, about how in every single way it seems society reemphasizes and defines and glorifies the role of the mother, which I think is awesome, amazing. And I do the same thing for my own and for my children's mother, my wife. But I often sort of struggle with the fact that the role of the Black male father is not as well extolled, is not as celebrated. And in so many ways, it's the exact opposite. It's given a reputation, a brand, and it's our fight to struggle to come from underneath that brand. And if you do rise from underneath it, you're an exception, a very rare exception. And I think all of us know that that isn't the total and complete truth. So my question to y'all is, if you could offer a memory, a thought, maybe a piece of advice that sort of sticks with you when you think about your relationship to your own dad.
Well, the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about a memory is my dad used to take me and my cousins to feed the ducks, which we can't do anymore in Seattle. But I love that. What I know is that my dad is a constant presence. And I know that is an exception and not the norm. Not just I think for Black fathers, but I think for so many kids and their fathers, even if they grew up in the house with them, like there's a label put on them of like, you're the provider. And so that means you work your hands to the bone to provide. And that means also that you can't be there with your kids as much. But I feel really fortunate, spoiled, and privileged to have grown up with a dad who was always there. And if he wasn't doing something for fun with me, we were definitely on our way to a protest. So that's the memory that come to play.
I love that.
We love Papa Rye.
Yeah,
Shout out to Papa Rye.
So my dad passed away when I was 12, I think. But my father, I was a daddy's girl all day. He too was a constant presence. We didn't live in the same house. He and my mom were together long enough to create me, and that was it. Right. But my father spent the night at our house, slept on the couch every Christmas Eve to be there with me when I would open my toys in the morning. if I wanted to be with my father, I was with my father. Now, that meant wherever my father was, I was there. If it was at a cabaret at midnight and I wanted to be with him, I was there. And he used to work for the city, driving like the big like machines that paved the roads. And he would drive by to see me. He had a motorcycle. I would be on, this is the 80s, so kids were different. I'd be on the motorcycle with him. One of my earliest memories, and I think it's important to say this to reflect the genuine love of all fathers. My dad struggled with addiction, and he would have me with him, and he was kind to everyone. He just never met a stranger. He loved animals. He was kind to people. And if you were like the winos on the corner, my dad would spend his last dollar to get them a fifth or whatever. And I remember, because I could be with him wherever, one of my earliest memories, I was a little girl, maybe 3 or 4, and I was on his lap, and my dad was with his friends doing what they do. And it was a bunch of guys, and they were like, Bronco, like Bronson Reed was my father's name. Bronco, put your daughter to bed. And my father had some choice words. My daughter can sit up here all day if she wants to on my lap. It's like midnight. And he said, man, please, my daughter gonna be cool. She gonna know about all this. And they start rolling the weed. My daughter's like, watch this, baby. What's this? I was like, a joint? See, ain't nobody gonna be able to talk no shit to my daughter. She blah. But he was an amazing dad, you know? Like, I don't romanticize what it would have been like to have Dr. Huxtable and Claire as my parents. I think the parents I had well prepared me for this life. And made me relatable to people beyond a socioeconomic status. You can drop me off in the hood on any MLK Boulevard, and I'm comfortable. I'm at home.
That's real.
And I credit my father in large part to that.
Yeah, it's funny you described your dad as sort of gregarious, outgoing, didn't meet a stranger.
Yeah.
My dad was the same way, and also struggled with addiction, alcohol addiction in his case. And I remember, it feels like all of it so vividly, because so my dad was a construction worker growing up, and my mom drove school buses, and there were 7 of us, 7 kids, and my dad would, I quite frankly remember my dad being more at my school plays, track meets, school events, even more than my mom. And that's not to say one is better than the other. My mother oftentimes couldn't do it because she would pick up after driving the school bus, and she worked down the street at the dry cleaners where she would press clothes until it closed. And then on the weekends, she would clean houses, and we would often go with her. So she was often, out there making sure that we had, she was earning what she needed to take care of all of us. But my father would like be the funnest guy in the room. He cracked the jokes. He's, slapping it, on the back with everybody, and people just loved him. They gravitated to him. I certainly gravitated to him in that way. And then there was this point at which you would start to get a little nervous because you knew daddy was drinking. And now at this point, he'll go beyond that point, and then it turned, ugly. And mostly it would turn ugly for my mother. And I remember not being able to reconcile the two. Like, just being, is my dad a bad guy or a good guy? Because I was experiencing him so much as a good guy. And then I'd see him argue with my mother, or I'd see him drunk and then pass out. And, not have his, his wits about him or whatever. But he was such a constant presence even through all of it, which is so strange. Because you think of alcoholism, and you think of alcohol abuse, and you think about homes that seem or feel broken, and it's easy to put that parent in a box, and you know which one is the bad one and which one is the good one and which one take care of you. And I don't have that of him. And I should also note today that we are sitting down and speaking is my dad's birthday. He passed away the year after I ran for governor, a few months after the race for governor was over. And I remember feeling like not the good child, because I didn't know he was sick. He didn't share it. It was such a shock, such a surprise. The next time I see him is at a hospital and he's not speaking. And, a few days later, dad's gone. And, but it is also very much so him. He didn't tell his problems to anybody. He didn't lean on anybody.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be a burden to anybody. If something was wrong, he just held it. He just kept it. So I'm thinking about my dad being deployed by the campaign, going to these neighborhoods, going back to Miami, like just doing what he could for his son while in pain and not sharing it. And, some, guilt around that, right?
Yeah, of course.
But I think part of what makes the job of Black fathers particularly challenging is not only do you have filling the role, right? You got to show up. You're often the provider, right? People who even grow up with dads in the home, as you referenced, Angela, they may be in the home, but they're also working this. The society gives them a burden that they have to cure. So he did those things, but I think as I reflect on him, I'm so blessed for the nuggets. He would tell every one of my other siblings, watch out for this one, because God knows he don't have it in common sense. He thought I was the kid that everybody was going to get over on because I saw innocence.
The diplomat.
Right, yeah. I was like, innocence and everything. And Daddy's like, nah, son, so he's telling my little baby sister, watch out for your brother.
Yeah.
That's not the way they're supposed to go.
And Monique does.
Yeah,
to be clear.
does. Yeah, she's the lawyer and she's skeptical of everybody and everything.
Yeah.
But I think about the role that we have to play, and then layer on top of that what society then says you are.
Yeah.
In every single way, shape, and form.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, particularly for you, Angela, because you do sit at an interesting intersection with Hollywood, film, production, the portrayal of figures and our community is it that saleable to tell the story repeatedly of an absentee dad who ain't about shit versus a more complete and accomplished story?
Yeah, I have a unique, I think, bias here, and I think part of it is I really do believe that a lot of people make film, write screenplays, and all of that based on their own experiences. Yeah, like people pile, I feel like, often on Tyler Perry, and I don't really see it in the same way. He has been relentless about speaking his truth about his experience.
Absolutely.
Growing up around his mom, when he went into the shop with her, like he talks about his own experience, and so you can get mad at it, but really, what is the societal condition that is there for us to address? I do think we could spend a lot more time highlighting not just the Black father, but also Black families and the ways, especially now, that people come together alternatively to create loving environments. I think one of the dopest things about the Black community historically has been our village. Yeah. The mentality that it takes a village to raise a child, and sometimes your aunties and your cousins and all that ain't blood related, but we were there because as a protection mechanism. And that is deep love that has virtually been destroyed now by, this is so not the point of this particular podcast, but like by gentrification and housing affordability and access and all of that. Some of those things have been broken down, and it has been very detrimental to, I think, these kids. Yeah. So I think that where fathers had to work, Auntie so-and-so came in and took over, this grandma or this Nana came in. And I think that some of those things should be celebrated more than what the father didn't do. The fact that this kid ended up all right is a testament to how incredibly dope and versatile and innovative the Black community is.
I think we should do a MiniPod on Tyler Perry. Or maybe something like how Black art and like storytellers. But I just want to offer this, and I did not plan this for this particular episode, but I just wrote something on Black fathers, and so I had to do research on it. And 70% of Black fathers who live with their children were most likely to have bathed, dressed, changed, or helped their babies potty every day. So even this narrative of Black fathers aren't there is not true. The data doesn't support it. And that was according to the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. The data showed that that was even more than white fathers. They were at 60%. Latino fathers were at 45%. Those same Black fathers were also more likely to have eaten a meal with their children. And the numbers are high, not just for biological fathers living in the home, but also for Black fathers stepping into the role of a step parent. And it shows that Black fathers maintain consistent involvement with their children, even when outside the home.
That's real.
I hate to say this. I may lose a man corner here or two in the audience. But I have to say President Obama was also somebody who perpetuated a narrative of this absent Black father that was not true. He represented a Black father who was present, but in his remarks, he would make these comments, and it's like, what are you basing that on?
Right.
That's not true. His Black father was not present. And so to your point, maybe he was talking about
Reflecting
his own
his
experience. But then would carry that message. And as the president, when you're speaking, you're not speaking to your father, you're speaking to the world.
Yeah.
And so the world would hear you lecture on some level.
Yeah.
Black fathers. And it wasn't warranted. It's like, hey, these kids go to Sidwell with your kids.
Yeah.
You know, like these kids' fathers are doing the same thing you're doing.
And he could have also been a victim of what society reemphasizes about who we are and how we show up.
Who they expected him to be.
That's right.
So he wanted to say, no, I'm on some level, I'm one of the good ones.
Except
look at me, and I'm going to go talk
Michelle
to them
Obama's
and tell them.
And you hear another expression.
Well,
That
she
is
was very honest about how things worked in their home and being challenged for a good decade in their marriage because of those roles and responsibilities.
And I get that too, right? Because he had expectations put on him of how he was supposed to perform. I always find it interesting when people think of dads as like disassociated emotionally from, their kids. I mean, I know Black dads who did skin to skin immediately after the mother did skin to skin contact with the baby after the baby was born, who were the ones who got up. I did, of course. Yeah, with all three.
Really?
For sure.
How'd you do it with both the twins? Or
did
you do it one
I had
by
a broad
one?
chest.
Really?
And I
So you did it at the same time with both of them?
When
That's so
they were
sweet.
premature
Yeah,
and
they
they
were
were tiny and they're everything. I take great pride in the role I'm able to play with my kids today, and it wasn't always that way. I think about when I was still very heavily entrenched in politics, and there were others in addition to RJ, but my mother-in-law, sitters who would have to take on more of those present roles. And I think I remember reflecting, like, after I lost the race, I kept thinking, like, oh my gosh, all these years that I can never get back, I gave to this thing, and I'll never. And it's okay, and I'm okay with it now because there are new moments that we're able to create. I love being emotionally in tune with them. I want my kids, to talk to me. I want my little third one to talk less because he just tells it all.
That's boss baby right there.
Boss baby tell it all.
Boss baby don't play.
But we show up and we grieve and we have, just deep hopes. And I think some of what I always tried to figure out, like my dad would always couch a good moment with, like, the shoes can drop. The shoe's gonna drop tomorrow. Like, he would never let you get too high on the upswing because he was trying to prepare me for the disappointing moments and days. And I know a lot of dads who do that. You want to tell your kid there's something around the bend. Like, be happy about this thing. Be okay. But they didn't let us go overboard because they knew that there was a much crueler and tougher society out there, conditions that they could not control, that they didn't want us to be thrown completely off and just set back on our heels. They're trying to prepare us. And I struggle now with a different preparation for my children because I don't want them to think that everything's hunky-dory in the world and everybody wishes them well and that kind of thing. But also don't want them having, seeing everything through a negative frame.
It's a unique burden that Black fathers have because it's like your mind. And I think this is unique to Black children. They come in the world as ours in terms of the communities.
That's right.
If you see any Black child anywhere, you feel responsible for that child.
Watch out, baby. Watch out. Yes. Don't get too close to the, whatever that is.
This woman, I don't remember who she was.
I be yelling at people's kids out the car window. I used to make fun of my
kids.
Angela cares for you all the way through. Tiffany, be careful. There's a swinging thing up there coming off the side of the building.
My dad would say, she alive, ain't she?
These children, I think because of the trauma of the plantation, that they could be beaten or taken away from you or looked as an adult at a certain point when they were far too young, that you do feel this traumatic protection for Black children. And you feel licensed to intervene. So if you see a father walking with his kids and you don't know this man from Adam, I feel like a lot of Black women take license like those are my children to
babies.
say something if I want to. And you can say to this father, that baby need a jacket on.
For sure.
Or that child need a hat on his head.
For sure.
And black men seem to understand this. You know, it might be frustrating and annoying, but it's like, this is how it works. At the playground, my friends who have kids, one of my close friends, he has 3 kids. I went to the playground with him, and it's a smorgasbord of kids there. But the black kids, all the black parents responsible for the black kids.
Yeah.
They didn't say anything to the white kids because you never know.
You never know how the parenting is.
But if you're in my community, I know it's like, hey, yeah, I told him to get down. He was crawling up that thing. I told him to get his butt down. You know, it's like, it's a collective raising of our children.
Yeah.
Right. But can I just say this too really quickly about your dad, Andrew? I hear you about like being in pain. I think that is quintessential black men. My father, I didn't know, he ended up passing away from cirrhosis of the liver. My grandfather was like that. Something about black men where it's like, we don't, well, of our generation and before, where you don't get to wear your feelings. And also, I would bet, I didn't know your dad, but I know your dad.
Yeah.
And I would bet he would not change any amount of time he spent. No way was he going to be at home feeling pain. I got to go hit this pavement. That's what I know how to do.
That's true.
And this is my boy. You know, my boy is running for governor. I'm going to go out and do this because this makes me not think about the pain. It not makes me think about my illness, you know?
He was so proud.
Yes.
So I want you to, like, you're talking about guilt. Like,
Don't
Andrew,
feel, he was doing what he wanted to
proud.
do. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I know there are more proud ones out there just like him where we're running short on time, but I hope that on this Father's Day that we do collectively, individually, and everywhere we can celebrate, lift up, compliment, share an experience that alters other people's narrative about what they think we are and how we show up, not necessarily just for them, but for us.
Yeah.
It pains me when I see impressions of black men as fathers that are wayward and don't reflect the men that I know.
Yeah.
And so this isn't about scripting to other people so that they understand and appreciate us. It's a script to ourselves, a reminder to ourselves, the ways in which we are pretty incredible beings, despite what they want us to believe about us. I want to thank y'all.
And you are, can we just say real quickly to our resident father, you are a wonderful black dad. Angela has spent a lot more time with Andrew and the kids. We went to brunch
the other week,
a couple weeks ago. And Andrew, 3 kids, you don't get to enjoy anything
of yours.
Yeah, Andrew would be ready to go put a scoop of ice cream, and it was like they would descend,
they converge.
and the ice cream was gone.
Everything.
Angela, I'm getting my own pancakes. They would descend, and his pancakes are gone. They were just like devouring everything.
I was telling Tiff I used to have to go into the pantry. Yes. If I want something for myself, I have to go into the pantry, sit down, and put my foot up against the door.
Literally keeping the
so
door
they can't
locked
open
so he
it.
can
Yes,
eat.
I can eat it.
So he can have his own
whatever
food.
you have is theirs. I love them for it.
And they're hanging off you. Like he couldn't even sit there.
Yeah.
Like Davis had his hand wrapped around. Even when you could eat, you were being choked. And if you standing up, one hanging off your arm. But those kids adore you.
They love him.
It is a beautiful thing to see your kids the way they love you and to hear you tell your story. And I think, what stories might your children tell about you one day? And I have no doubt they will all be joyful and be told with pride. So happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you.
Father's
And
Day,
happy
Andrew
Father's
Gillum.
Day out there to all of you, and welcome home.
Welcome home. All right, thanks for listening, you guys. Please, please, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, and tune into our regular episode on Thursdays. Welcome home, y'all. Native Land Pod is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeart Radio, visit the iHeart Radio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.